with 5 seconds. He's going to throw it. Howard leaps. He has it. Touchdown. Carolina back from the dead to tie the game with 2 seconds to go. Snap back, spot down. The kick is cleanly away. It is good. And it's with a 54-yard field goal. And how about them Tar Heels? They do it.
Here's Kupak. Gives off to Amos. He's got it. He's got it. Unbelievable. Unreal.
Jordan back to kick. It's blocked again. Picked up. It'll be a touchdown, Carolina, for Bracey Walker. He blocks his second punt and scores his second touchdown of the season. It's 14-13. Mr. Jordan meet Mr. Walker.
Bernard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio, he's going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
This is the Heel Tough Blog Podcast on Spreaker.com. We welcome in from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, but also the Georgia High School Football Daily e-newsletter. It's Todd Holcomb. He's going to help us look at some of the guys from Georgia. Most of the guys are from in the Atlanta area, maybe just a little bit outside of the Atlanta area, and he's going to help us take a look at them. So, Todd, first of all, how's it going today, man? Thanks for being able to cut out a little bit of time to talk to us in a time that's starting to get a little bit busy as we close in on high school football season.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to high school football season for sure, and thanks for having me on the show. I'm doing well.
So, I wanted to start by asking you about one of our guys that's really, really highly thought of now. He's starting to sail up some boards here because he's been performing just unbelievably in the camp season, and that's Josh Downs. Now, I know the commitment, a lot of people really focus on Dre Bly and what he's done at Carolina coming in and being a good recruiting presence, as well as the fact that he is related to him. But, what are you getting in a kid like Josh Downs? I mean, I know he played, he actually plays where Cade Fortin used to play high school football at North Gwinnett, which is one of the teams that's still highly thought of in that area. I mean, is this a guy that you think can come in and have a really early impact when he gets to Chapel Hill?
I think he's got a good chance. He's very mature, and he's been good for a long time. He's not someone who is just, he may have be rising the scales as far as what he's doing at combines or camps and that sort of thing. But he's been well known in Georgia for some time. He was a starting wide receiver and one of the top wide receivers on a state championship team when he was a sophomore. Mm-hmm. And I think he had over 1,000 yards receiving that year. And then last season he didn't have quite as many yards, but he didn't have the experienced quarterback of the same offensive system to spotlight him. But I think he'll have another good year. This year, I think he'll go over 1,000 yards again. But he's, certainly one of the 2 or 3 best wide receivers, I think, in Georgia, which is saying a lot.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people that are encouraged by what they're seeing from him and think he could potentially be a guy that comes on campus and makes a really quick impact in Chapel Hill. Now, there are 2 guys that play at the same high school that are committed to Carolina, and they play for one of the better schools in the state of Georgia as well, another very well-known school at Roswell High School. Both Trey Zimmerman, the offensive tackle, and then John Copenhaver, the tight end. I want to start with Zimmerman. He was a guy that committed a little bit earlier. I watched him a little bit on tape. I like his movement a lot. He's got the body style to play pretty early. Is he a guy that you think will, come in and raise some eyebrows when it comes to what Stacey Searles is going to do on the offensive line for Carolina?
Similar to Downs, I'm going to sound like I'm repeating myself, but Zimmerman is another guy who has been a very good high school player for a while. He was first-team All-Region as a sophomore, the unanimous pick. You makes you think, well, of course these guys were good in high school, but it's really not always the case. When you look at guys who are 3-star, 4-star guys or top 50 players in Georgia, I'd say a third of them are guys that are rated highly because of their size or how they perform at a camp or a combine and those kind of numbers things. But Zimmerman he's already pretty good. So it's not, I don't think, he's fairly polished. I don't think he's going to have to wait a long time before he helps at least a little bit on the line. And, I think he's another really good player.
And then when we talk about Copenhagen, I watched him a little bit, just some of his highlight tapes, and the thing that jumps off immediately is this is a guy that's going to catch the ball a lot. He's a guy that's going to be that Y tight end. He's going to be a guy that's almost exclusively used catching the football because he only weighs about 210 pounds. I think he fits that specific type of role, and with Carolina going to more of an air raid type offense, does that seem like the perfect fit in your mind for a guy that catches the ball as often as he does?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, he definitely wants to go to a place where he's going to get a chance to catch a lot of balls. He's not going to be a big blocker type, and he's a guy, unlike the other two, that really did have a breakout year last year at the high school level, and I think he had 12 TD passes, which is a lot for a tight end. And you also see he's not just a possession tight end. I mean, there are times when he gets past people in the secondary, or people, he gets open and people can't chase him down. And he's got a lot of big plays he's made, 50, 60, 70-yard touchdown catches. Just big, tall guy. Hard to match up with him because he's got a little speed to him as well, and he's 6'4".
Right, yeah. So, I mean, when I look at him, I think, we look back to a guy like Eric Ebron that we had a little while ago. I think that's a sort of a good comparison for what people should look at for him whenever he gets to the college level. So, one of the other things I wanted to ask you, Larry Fedora did a really good job of recruiting in the Georgia area. Now Mack Brown has to kind of keep that up, but he's also, been focusing on trying to lock down the state of North Carolina at the same time. Do you hear good things about Mack Brown? Is he a guy that's well known in the state of Georgia, or is starting to become more well known in the state of Georgia for some of these younger kids that maybe didn't know about his success at Texas?
Yeah, I think a lot of them may not remember when he was at Texas, like watching him on TV and that sort of thing. Maybe a little far removed, but people respond to the fact that you've been in a program that's competed for a national championship or on a big level, and so much of this is marketing. It's just a guy who's won before, so I think that's going to get a lot of people's attention. And really, I mean, I think if you're in the ACC, you've got to recruit Metro Atlanta and Georgia. It's probably the strongest state outside of Florida, at least in the South, in just terms of the numbers of players that it puts out. So I think that they can do well in Georgia, and they've done well. There's a decent number of those players on their roster now. It looks like there's about 10 or 12. So I think they'll continue to do well here.
I was talking to Todd Holcomb of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and the Georgia High School Football Daily e-newsletter. One of the last things that I wanted to ask you before we get you out of here, there's one guy on the roster that just came in last year and was phenomenal. And I remember looking back on when he was recruited to Carolina, and he was a guy that showed up. You watched his tape a few times and said, okay, he might be decent. But Trey Morrison last year as a nickel corner, he was fantastic. And he's a guy that now, I mean, there's a lot of Tar Heel fans that really do believe, especially if he was out at one of the outside corner positions, he would probably be the highest draft pick that the Tar Heels have had defensively in a very long time, because he's just that good. Do you remember covering Trey, and what, is that really shocking to you guys, or is that kind of par for the course for a guy like Trey Morrison?
I think it was a little surprising, yeah. I mean, he plays on a smaller school, or 4 smaller schools than these other 3 guys that you've got coming in. And they had a lot of good players, and he was just another one of those good ones, So, and he played a lot both ways, I think, wide receiver and defensive back. I wasn't even sure what his position was going to be. So I would say it's not surprising he's a good college player, but maybe surprising that he's that good right away. And I think with the guys you asked me about with Zimmerman and Downs and Copenhagen, I would have thought they would be more ready to play at the next level, especially Zimmerman and Downs, because they're playing. And another thing I wanted to point out about those guys too that I should have before is that they're playing in the highest classification in Georgia,
right?
Top 48 schools in terms of the size of the schools. There are 2,000, 3,000 students in those schools, and they're really high performers at really good programs that are playing really tough schedules week in, week out. So that makes me a little more confident how well they might do. Whereas Morrison, he was just another pretty good player. I'm not sure he was even first team All-State. So that's what it just kind of shows. You just never know until they get there on campus.
Well, we'll ask you one last question, Todd, and then we'll get you out of here. One of the guys that's competing for the quarterback position is Cade Fortin, and he played, as we mentioned earlier, at the same high school that Josh Downs did. Now, he was the guy that started the year when Downs was a sophomore. Unfortunately, he went down in the second game of the year due to an injury, but the year before that, he was really, really successful. I mean, is this a guy that you look at and say he can play in the ACC, he can play at one of the highest levels in a Power 5 program?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, he's a tall guy and pretty sturdy, and he's got the arm. I think he definitely could see him being a very good ACC quarterback. And you're right, he got hurt. The funny thing about it was he got hurt, and the guy who came in was not as good, but I think they went on and won the state title that year. So it was a big irony. But he'd been a 2-year starter prior to that. That would have been his third year. Starting, and he was a well-known and good quarterback in Georgia, and it's always good to see a guy get the opportunity to, since he did miss his senior year, to kind of have a chance to blossom. So I think he'll be a good one.
Well, we'll see. Cade's going to continue to battle both Sam Howell, the true freshman who comes from the Charlotte area, and then Jace Reuter, who comes out of the middle of the country in Norton, Kansas. So it should be a fantastic battle down the stretch, and we're going to look to bring in some of those 2020 guys. Who knows? Maybe Cade will be hooking up with his former teammate here not too long from now next year in Chapel Hill. We sure hope so. So if they want to keep up with his former teammate Josh Downs or the guys from Roswell High School, where can they follow your stuff at so they can make sure they keep up with everything going on in the Atlanta area in general, an area that we've got a couple of other key targets in as well?
Sure. Well, look us up on Twitter at Georgia High School Football Daily, and we don't stay really prominent online with websites or even Twitter, but you can sign up for the newsletter there, and it's free. And we have over 20,000 subscribers, and just a good indication of how popular football is in the state of Georgia.
Hey, Todd. Hey, thank you so much for joining us. This was fantastic. Got to learn a little bit about our 3 guys that'll be coming, and hopefully we'll be talking to you sometime down the line, maybe about some other guys that are committed. Maybe have to get you back on and talk a little more Georgia high school football towards the end of the year. How does that sound, my man?
That sounds great. Have me on anytime.
All right. Yes, sir. Hey, thank you, Todd, and we'll talk to you down the line. Best of luck this year covering high school football in that Atlanta area, okay?
Great. Take care.
All righty. So that is Todd Holcomb of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and the Georgia High School Football Daily e-newsletter. Now remember, you can go to Georgia High School Football Daily on Twitter, search that in there, and they do update. Sometimes there are some other guys that will keep you updated around the Georgia area as well on some of the other stuff that's going on. But Todd, he does a fantastic job covering them as a freelancer for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and I'm so glad he was able to come on and talk a little bit about some guys out of the Atlanta area that are really, really good. We talked about Josh Downs. This is a guy that is now consistently inside of the top 150. He's starting to creep up into the area where he could start sneaking into the top 100. That's how good he has been on these camp tours. So we're talking about the opening. We're talking about the Rivals camp. I know he got the invite to the Rivals final. I'm not sure about the opening. I'm pretty sure he did because he won fastest man, but I could be wrong on that. So he's really tearing it up. Everybody knows about him now. He's sort of jumping on the scene. We've seen him start to get some of these bigger offers, but he is, at the moment at least, solidly committed to Carolina. And also, I think Jacoby Criswell's commitment also kind of helps that a little bit because he had developed a little bit of a connection with Criswell, so that's kind of big. Also, we talked about both John Copenhaver and Trey Zimmerman, 2 guys that are very solidly committed as of right now out of Roswell High School in Roswell, Georgia. That area in specific is the area to keep an eye on. Of course, you got T. Lee, the athlete who's committed to Arizona State. He's from Buford High School. That's the same high school where guys like Nick Polino and Bryson Richardson went. That's one of the better schools in the entirety of Georgia and one of the better schools on the East Coast. They've been known for a very long time. So keep an eye on T. Lee, very talented young player. Another guy to keep an eye on in that area is Choey Bryant Strother. He comes from the same high school that Trey Morrison came from. That's Greater Atlanta Christian School. So another smaller school, but like Todd said, they don't really jump out, but they seem to have produced some really good players, some guys that apparently are ready to play immediately as Trey Morrison's showed you last year. So keep an eye on those guys. There's a couple of other key targets in the state of Georgia that we'll be keeping an eye on as well. And we'll let you guys know, of course, if there are any other commitments as we continue going throughout the season and head towards the 2019 on-field season. So that's going to do it for this edition of the podcast. Remember that this is part of a series. So if you want to go back and listen, we have had the Charlotte Observer's Langston Wirtz Jr. on, and we also had the Houston Chronicles' Adam Coleman on. Langston Wirtz, of course, talking about the 6 Charlotte area commits, and then Adam Coleman was able to jump on and tell us a little bit about Malik Hornsby, who comes out of that Houston area. So we've had some great talks so far. We're going to continue the series tomorrow, hoping to find maybe someone up in that Virginia area that can talk a little bit about Ethan West, or maybe we'll try to get one of the guys on that can talk about Jacoby Criswell. We don't really know, but so far we've gotten you some great information. We hope you've really enjoyed the information that we've been getting you on the guys that are currently committed in the 2020 class. So, once again, want to thank Todd Holcomb for stopping by. Remind you that you can go online to www.heeltoughblog.com. That's where you can check out everything that you want to check out about Tar Heel football. It's got all of the storylines, and it's even got some really cool stuff. We got the tier rankings. That's our off-season series that we're doing this year, where we rank the tiers of each position. So far, we have got quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. Offensive line is being worked on as we speak. And then, of course, we'll finish up with the defensive side of the football, where we'll go defensive line, linebacker, and defensive back. Just how we're going to do the previews later on this year, where we'll go through every single guy that is on the roster and tell you a little bit about them to make sure that you're keeping an eye on them for this season. So, want to thank you guys for listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.